Yes, guys, welcome back to the podcast. Before we get going, obviously just want to say, do the normal housekeeping stuff. Obviously, YouTube viewers, subscribe, comment, like, bell notification, bell icon for notifications. There we go, nailed it. Spotify, you can leave comments, leave us a rating. Obviously, 5 stars is preferable. And yeah, obviously, we do have a Patreon. It's popping off. We've got a group chat. It's also popping off. You get exclusive episodes, which the first one is dropping at some point. I don't know when this video is coming out.
Should be out by now.
Probably should be out by now. There'll be clips on our Instagram, so go check it out there. But yeah, come join the Patreon. Anyway, right, we've got that out of the way. We've got a guest today who I think probably... Actually, I'm going to let Rich tee up because Rich has got a theory about this guest today.
I don't know whether this is true.
We'll let you, you can tell us if it's true or not.
Having obviously known you for a long, long time and know your discography pretty well, and then going and doing a bit of research, I would like anyone who out there who can be bothered to spend the time doing it to tell me if they can think of an artist that's released on more labels than you have. Because I genuinely, I don't think there is one out there. Not one I can think of anyway.
Just a big slag, basically.
no one can pin you down, mate. Standard.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
I think it's a great thing, man. Honestly, I was rating it.
I guess two things. It kind of speaks to how versatile your sound can be.
Yeah.
Because you've kind of released on maybe you make beautiful soulful, but you also make crazy tear out stuff. Jungly bits in between. So I would say it's a good thing.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it to as a way. Do you know what I mean? If I was doing it all over again, you're much better off doing it the way you guys did. Just make a few tunes, get signed to a strong brand, and stick with that for a significant period of time until you become a headliner.
Your statements must be crazy, by the way. How many royalty statements you get from various places?
It's trying to remember, to even hit up all the labels. Go, oh yeah, you owe me money. It's not it's a bit of a admin rigmarole, all right. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I guess I started off so young, and it was sort of, it wasn't really. The sort of current system, if you like, wasn't sort of in place as much. There wasn't artists signing to record labels in drum and bass. That just wasn't really something that happened in the 90s. People, you'd see the same artists having a V, having a Metalheads, having a Prototype, having a 31, and then they usually start their own label. And yeah, I just sort of, I don't know, I did do a label, obviously, for a couple of years, we might talk about, but... I just, I don't know. Maybe it's, I don't know, if ADHD or something, but and it's nice to have different. Now I've kind of got a smaller handful of labels that I regularly.
I was going to say, it feels like you're 2 or 3 labels that you're most regular on.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and it's not strictly, but it pretty much breaks down. The soulful stuff goes to North Quarter, and the heavier stuff goes to Sofa Sound or Symmetry or Heads or whatever it is. But I think definitely whittling it down is probably better than just being absolutely everywhere.
But I still think even that the core labels you're working with, there's still so much variety there, and they're top tier labels that are killing it right now.
We've not even spoken about the Alias shit even. We've got time. We'll get into all of that.
It's just a testament to your network and how how your history in the game and how you're so respected by people. Also, by the way, we probably should say it's zero T. If anyone hasn't actually got that,
we didn't even do the intro. We just went straight.
You hand over to me. That was kind of a bit jaded, but we like to be super, slick and professional on this.
Don't worry, we'll edit that. We'll cut it up.
But I think I think it's a really, really positive thing, and I got a lot of respect for it, and I think a lot of people in the game have as well. Hence why it's very easy for someone to come and ask you to do something for them, and I think that happens quite a lot. People would want you to work on their label. That can only be a good thing, really. Accounting nightmare, but
that's all I can think about is the accounting. It must be crazy.
Yeah, it is a bit of a nightmare. I guess it sort of comes out of how I sort of was introduced to this music and who my role model was, I guess, or role models were when I first started getting into it. The 2 first people I ever saw DJing were Chemistry and Storm, and then Doc Scott.
Wow. I mean,
nice.
Yeah. If that was a Mount Rushmore of D&B, that's probably
exactly,
3/4 of it.
And I was
right there.
15, 16 or something, and both of them, Scotty and Kevin Storm, you'd hear all sorts of different stuff. They'd be playing stuff of good looking Bristol stuff, and then suddenly you're like in the darkest, heaviest headsy sort of, no U-turn and all that stuff, like all in 1 hour, and all sort of melted into this amazing journey, basically. And that's just what I was like, well, that's what this is. Like, that's what makes this special, is that it's just a tempo, sort of vague idea of 2 bars of drums for 1 bar of music.
So you weren't really thinking about like, I'm a liquid producer, I'm a jungle producer.
There was no,
just,
those things didn't exist.
Subgenres, basically. Yeah.
It was just drum and bass.
Yeah.
It was no like liquid drum and bass didn't exist until 2000, 99, 2000. So I'm talking, this is like 95, 96. And saw them, and I just was like, and if you look at Scotty's production as well, he was obviously a lot more active back then, but he still didn't make many tunes, but all of his tunes were like the best tune in each sort of style, like dark, headsy, super blissed out, beautiful stuff as well. So I just always was like, well, that's how you do drum and bass, basically. Do you know what I mean? It's not you just do one thing and that's it, because to me that's sort of boring. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then obviously, that's sort of taking that approach to making music then as well as DJing. It sort of makes sense that you're going to sit in a few different camps, basically.
So you were DJing before you were making music.
Absolutely,
then?
Yeah.
How long was the gap?
Not long. I started messing around like at home with decks when I was about 16, and then I think it was like a week after my 18th birthday, I supported Ed Rush in Dublin.
Nice.
December 1998.
Nice. Was that Bassbin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can imagine what he had on dub plate in December 1998.
Yeah.
So that was pretty life-altering experience in Spain. Our first gig as well was like pretty crazy. So that was like end of 98, and by the end of 99, I had co-produced Bassbin #1 and signed first tune to Reinforce.
Nice.
Which
So
came out the following
I've heard the name Bassbin. I've seen the logo, and I think I've seen you talk about it before. But like for those who don't know, what was Bassbin? Who was involved? And kind of
Okay, so Bassbin started in 1996. 2 guys called Rohan and Nafta started the DJs who started it as a monthly night to get over big name from the UK, and one or the other of them would play support. Clubs in Ireland still close at 3, so there's basically just like one support DJ, and then he plays for like a couple of hours or till midnight or whatever, and then the headliner plays the rest of the night.
Okay.
So it's very different to what we're used to here, like where it's 11 till 6 and there's loads of slots. So that was the case for, I'd say, the first 2 years of Bassbin was just once a month, with great guests as Doc Scott, Photech, Digital, Digo from 4 Hero. Who else do we have? Boimerang, believe it or not. We actually had him DJing. I don't know if you're even aware of who he is, but he's this guy that made tunes for about 1 year, and like all of like Goldie and Groove Rider and all those guys just were going absolutely sick.
Yeah.
For he invented a drum break basically that's still, Silver Blade, the Dungy tune.
Yeah.
He made that drum break.
Right.
Really?
So that's the Boimerang break.
Right.
And he was basically like a rock music producer who just sort of
dipped his toe in.
For a while, and all the sort of prototype heads a lot were just absolutely obsessed with him, and we got him to DJ in Dublin, and he was so bad that the resident had to come back on and take him off the deck.
Really?
I've never seen that happen before. He basically he must have got an early flight, and he just drank all the Guinness in Dublin.
Yeah.
And he couldn't DJ anyway, so that wasn't going to help.
It's a train wreck.
Yeah, basically, so it sort of grew into a collective of about, I don't know how many of us were there, about 15 to 20 DJs, which sort of naturally sort of paired up into pairs where everyone sort of did a DJ to slightly different style. So you'd have some guys who were like mad into like Paradox and like late 90s Reinforced, like really technical drum stuff. Some guys who were just like pure Dope Dragon jump up guys, and I was sort of Optical and Matrix was kind of what I was like really, really on around that time. And it just worked really nicely because you'd have a real variation in the night. And then, when did it start? I want to say like 99, we got the idea of let's try and do a label. We're going to model it on our favorite labels, which are Reinforced, Metalhead's, Full Cycle, and try and do the same as they've done. Basically, do a collective. And just us, like none of us knew what we were doing. This is back in the days of samplers, and you needed about 5 people to scrape together enough money to buy one piece of kit each, and then all of you put it together to have one studio.
Yeah.
And it was all quite hard fought for, like, and very expensive, which is hard when you're a kid. You know what I mean? So I think I literally, like, my granddad died, and I inherited 1,000 Irish pounds, which is about 800 English pounds at the time, and I bought an EMU sampler. And that was sort of the start for me. But yeah, we just basically started all just knocking our heads against the wall.
Just on that point, like, sorry, I was just thinking, because I guess me and Jack would have had a very similar entry into like music production, where it was just like a cracked version of a piece of software. And you're saying
all
like,
our software was cracked.
800 quid.
Yeah,
is the point of entry to get into music production. Which
no, that's just for one piece.
Yeah,
of
that's
kit.
what I'm saying. So like the difference is crazy.
No, you need like 3, 4, 5,000 pounds just to be able to get a beat to go boom.
To be bad at making music as well. Yeah.
To not have any clue what you're doing, basically.
Yeah, which is so nuts. Yeah.
Also, it's sort of, it's pre. I mean, the internet existed, but it's pre like connected world and all that.
Yeah.
And we're isolated in Dublin, so we don't know. It's not like, if you're in London or whatever, you could friends up some guy who's a sick producer already and go and watch him doing his thing and learn from that. We literally it was just trial and error, and it was horrendous.
Kind of in a vacuum in a way.
So cool.
It's bloody horrendous.
It's interesting, though, because that's what we had Adrian Sattel on as our last guest, the 2 guests ago.
Yeah.
And he was kind of in a different, obviously, time period, but like he was saying, because there was no drum and bass people in Poland at all, in a similar way, he kind of had no community, so he was just kind of just doing stuff.
Yeah.
Doing his own thing, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it has its advantages and disadvantages, I guess. You can kind of maybe find your own sound a bit quicker if you're not surrounded by other people doing the same thing.
Yeah.
But and now it's different because you can just go on YouTube and learn everything. So
Hence why it's like so saturated now as well. It's just like,
and it doesn't cost $3 grand either to build a studio.
The barrier to entry is zero.
Super low.
So compared to before, what that sort of did, I guess, was it whittled out anyone who wasn't deadly serious about it. You know what I mean? It just like there was no dabblers. Basically, it was just like this is make this your life or get out of the room. Like, you know what I mean? So it would take like 2 weeks to make a drum beat. Yeah. Like, and also if you're sharing a studio with people, which you invariably were, everything's analog. So at the end of your session, you lose your mix, you lose everything about the tune, basically. I mean, you can reload it, but all your settings, all the outboard gear settings are all going to be scrubbed and changed for some next person's tune. Yeah. So you come back the next day or the next few days or whatever, you can never get it back. Even we used to take photos, like digital photos and Polaroids and stuff of all the desk and the...
It still doesn't sound the same, does it?
Still doesn't sound the same. It's some alchemy and magic, and it's just all electricity. So the temperature outside and how much damp there is in the room, and all, like how long have your valve compressors been on for before you're playing the tune through them? Like it changes the sound. Like so all that stuff. It was. I mean, I know it sounds like romantic and stuff now. Like
it's annoying though. Right?
It's a pain in the ass. Like, it was such a pain in the ass.
And
that's what
people pay a lot of money for now, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, obviously, again, because it's so hard fought for. That, if you were able to actually make a tune that's like playable and releasable, you're sort of like, you know what I mean? You're already like 5 steps into the game, basically. Whereas kind of anyone with very little time and the right software and looking at the right tutorials can get, decent sounding tunes quickly. And I'm not talking about the musical quality. I'm just talking about the sonic level of it. Whereas back then it was, that stuff was all a mystery to us. And, we'd obviously pick the ears of all the guys we were getting over from the UK, but you don't want to hassle them too much. And also you'd get one guy who'd be like Johnny L, for instance. He's get loads of compressors, just compress everything as much as you possibly can. Just like, because his tunes were insanely loud, right? And it was like, right, okay. And then Optical would come over and he's like, I don't compress any of my drums at all. Like, what the hell, man? Like, what is going on? Like, can somebody give me the right answer here? Like, or I used to like corner, it was more later in later years when I knew them more sort of personally. Yeah. But I remember cornering Doc Scott just being like, how did you do them? Like, what is the secret to the mix down of like Swarm or whatever track I was obsessed with at that time? And He's just like, oh, I was just lucky that day, kind of thing. Like, just no useful information at all. Just like, oh, it just sort of came together. I was like, oh, great. But what was nice about that period, and you can really hear it when you go back and listen to the music, is no two people had the same setup.
Yeah.
Everyone had, even if you're using, the same sampler, then you're going to have a different desk or a different synth and different outboard kit. And it all just like, no two people are going to sound exactly the same because everyone's using different stuff. So, and obviously there was like Akai sound and then versus Emu sound, and then very different sort of finish to the sound. Akai's much rounder, sort of like, and Emu's like just that like optical,
like crunchy,
like amazing distortion type twisty stuff. But yeah, anyway, Bassbin. So we start hammering our heads against the wall, trying to make tunes, and decided to do a label, thinking, this is probably not going to go beyond the shores of Ireland, really, like. And then just by complete chance, around the same time, myself and Beta 2, who's one of the other Bassbin original guys, we'd been making tracks together, and he was just a producer. He didn't DJ. So I was coming from being a DJ who was learning how to produce, and he'd been like making tunes on his own since he was 12 or something, like on a tracker program. Looking at the Matrix.
It's like, I was going to say, it's like vertical scrolling numbers.
So Breakage started on as well, though.
Breakage, you see, it literally looks like the Matrix.
It is literally just numbers going down the screen. I don't know.
It's like coding.
Well, it's almost like just if you imagine what a door would look like 100 years ago, basically.
It's insane. It's crazy. It looks like hieroglyphics. It's just mad. But you could do some insane edits on it. So all that very first batch of Breakage stuff, all those crazy Amen edit tunes, like that's all on trackers.
Like
nice.
Old PlayStation 1 games that all had a mad jungle track, like soundtracks. Yeah. That's all basically made in that. That's how they're all made, all the crazy like drum edits and stuff. Yeah.
So we'd started making a couple of tunes together, and we just went for Hero. We're DJing in the Reinforced night in Dublin. I was some random promoter. It wasn't one of the drum and bass promoters, so it was like a bit, oh, that's strange. We just went down to it. And Beta 2's girlfriend at the time ended up dragging them back to the afters, like, and we were like, oh, like, freaked out, like, these guys are our heroes and all this, like, no pun intended. And yeah, like, we were just sort of nervous to even talk to them, and she was quite forthright.
Because she didn't have the same level of like, oh my god, it's these people.
I mean, it really wouldn't have mattered who it was. She's that type of person. She just
you need those people.
Exactly. Yeah. So she's like, oh, my boyfriend and his mate are making tunes. Like, we were like, shut up. Embarrassed, and they were just like, all right, well, this is how this is the era it was. So this is at like 3 or 4 in the morning or 5 in the morning or whatever in some apartment party after the club. And they're like, all right, we're leaving the hotel at 1 p.m. tomorrow to go back to the airport. Like, come meet us with a CD. Because you had to go and, like, you had to burn a CD. Physically hand it to them. And burning a CD wasn't like putting it in a computer and hitting a thing. It was like literally getting one CD deck and a CD burning deck and getting a phono lead, one after the other, and recording it and making sure it doesn't clip and all. Mad. So literally doing that at 6 in the morning to get back to the hotel to give the CD, and we just expected nothing of it, obviously. And a few days later, Mark Mack, For Hero, rang up and he's like, we want to take that tune and this tune. And
Sick.
So that was all a crazy shock, and it was like, oh my god, didn't expect that at all. And then so we did our first like EP and single sort of at the same time, and the first trip we made over to Reinforced Studio in Dollis Hill in London, I was there to get the test pressings and just meet them and hang out and whatever. Breakage walks through the door to collect the test pressings of his first EP, and it just sort of immediately clicked, me and him. It was just like, playing tunes for each other and all that sort of stuff. And I just knew his music. I was like, this is exactly like what Bassbin, all the DJs, even though we all play different styles, there's certain tunes that everyone would play. Yeah. And I was like, Breakage is that guy. Like, he is. What's
funny is that's kind of true now still as well. Like, everyone plays Breakage.
That is so true.
But for us, it was very, like, at that time, there was, so this is sort of, 2000. So what is dominating at the time is Bad Company, right? That's the sound. Yeah, it's just on the cusp of this the sort of Total Science digital hardware hardcore sort of revival stuff.
Yeah.
But in terms of just like heavy breaks, heavy subs, and dub sort of influences, you know, they're digital obviously, but there wasn't a lot kind of going on in that sort of specific style at the time. So yeah, so then Breakage, I linked that up, and Breakage started doing tunes for Bassbin, and then he brought like some of the other In Perspective guys like Fracture and Neptune and Paradox started doing tunes, and it just sort of became a different thing then. It sort of just very quickly, it was a sort of respected label releasing really good music by artists from beyond the shores of Ireland, basically. And then I think it was sort of like 2005, I want to say, that Rohan decided to pack it in. I think it was the sort of end of vinyl that he saw the writing on the wall at the end of vinyl kind of thing, and was like, you know, it was a vinyl label, and I just don't think he had the appetite for kind of moving into the digital era, if you like. So
Possibly a really like smart move. Like we all know like, what happened to music in that era. It's particularly tough if you were like trying to make that transition from vinyl to where you would actually, you know, make money off of vinyl.
I was watching like documentaries, people were like, I sold like 10,000 of this.
Well,
just
my
that's
favorite
like a 300 run.
The thing is, that's the thing.
For
right?
some of us,
Some of us
only get a 300 run, Jack. Yeah,
but that used like the 300 used to just be the white labels you give away for free. You do 3,000, and like literally it didn't matter if your tunes were crap, it didn't matter if they were on some unknown label, because just the culture of going out and buying records was like so many people in the world doing it every week. You're selling, like, even as a newcomer with sort of no name and not necessarily on a big label, you're baseline, you're selling 1,500 copies, like that's absolute minimum, like, and
crazy.
I like, just as an example, I did that Most Def bootleg I did in like, what was that, 2006 or something. That was the first thing I ever did that wasn't in samplers. It was my practice for checking out it all in the box, like the first sort of thing I did all in the laptop. And I just wanted to do something fast, so I was like, oh, that's half speed of drum and bass, I'll just boot like that, and did 5 hours or something, like, do you know what I mean? And then that got pressed on one side of vinyl, and I sold so many copies I paid rent in London for over a year.
Christ.
Literally.
Right. So that's the way it was. And
it's the reason that I used to think that I could do this as a full-time job, and then now it's just like not a reality. Well, unless you're like top of the fucking...
Well, I mean, legitimately, there's probably only a few dozen artists,
if that,
in the country who
that,
can say like one tune has paid for a whole year's rent in London.
That's mental.
That's quite a lot.
It's crazy.
Like,
it's insane.
That is nuts.
So like I sort of kind of like got a bit of a taste of the end of the vinyl era, basically. But what the main thing I miss, I guess, about that era is, because it was a viable thing, you could make a very, very good living out of just selling the music. The best producers, the most like innovative and genuinely different and game-changing artists weren't DJs. Photek, Dillinger, Goldie, none of those guys DJ'd at all, and they didn't have to, right? Especially Dillinger and Photek. Those guys never, ever, ever DJ'd until like 98 or something. So you got like the peaks of their career, like 94 to 98, when they're just like the absolute dons of the world and like getting huge deals from major labels and stuff. Never DJ'd because they didn't have to. You could sell, like, I don't want to like expose people's numbers and stuff, but like
you were making serious
those guys,
at that point.
Like, I
remember that also really famous documentary where like there's I can't remember which producers are, but they buy matching M3s or whatever.
Source Direct,
that's it. You know what I'm talking about.
It's
like, we just sold these records, we just bought matching M3s, like
like basically the it's hard to sort of imagine now, but like I guess the most similar thing to it, I guess, didn't even really happen in the same way in dubstep, but like that's sort of like, awareness beyond just like enthusiasts and like even just dance music people, like a bigger awareness than that, that maybe people like Screaming Benga or Chasing Status or something had. Skrillex, exactly. Yeah. That was drum and bass in the 90s, and like it was in, you were reading like it's The Observer would have a big piece on it in the Sunday magazine.
Yeah.
It was just the coolest thing in the world, basically, in full stop, like music wise. And you know, the club was full of celebrities, like, you know what I mean, David Bowie and Bjork and it's just like crazy, you know what I mean, like genuinely, like, you know, the girls who used to do the door at Metalheads used to tell me some funny stories, like they'd like the Spice Girls show up and they'd just be like, no, yeah, you're not on the list. You know what I mean? Or like, you know, like Naomi Campbell and Kate Moss trying to get in.
It was like trendy though.
It was like the biggest thing in the world. Like,
yeah.
Is that like Blue Note?
Yeah. And it was just, I don't know, for me, and the music being so amazing, it just sort of added to the whole, like, just like cutting edge feel to the whole thing.
Where did it all go wrong?
Well, I heard a
No,
great.
we're not going to turn this on.
no.
Okay, and I have
I
to
would say, like,
yeah.
I just
I
think
heard,
now,
I heard a
like,
great phrase that we can like underline this whole segment on,
Yeah.
if you like, is like in what is it? Shit, I was watching something about the rise and fall of Vice magazine, or the Vice brand.
Okay,
And
yeah.
someone said something along the lines of, you know, within the seeds of within every successful thing is the seeds of its destruction.
Yeah.
And like basically, when things get popular, that's the beginning of the end.
Yeah.
Yeah,
of
and
what
I
it
feel like
was.
it's probably happened, maybe not to the extent you just described. It's happened a couple of times since, probably lesser peaks. Like, I don't think it's at the peak what you described. But again, now I feel like we're getting to that point where it's so big again. Like, it's kind of starting to, like, I mean, you were seeing like chart music as drum and bass influence again.
Absolutely.
I mean, we've said it for a while, haven't we? Like,
Yeah.
it will get to a point where it becomes so sort of normalized that it's no longer cool to those that just want it because it's cool.
Yeah.
And then for those that really genuinely love it, it will almost go back to, well, hopefully it will revert back to just being just a really
It's whenever the majors
classy-
decide that they're done with
Yeah,
it, and then it
basically, they're
becomes
out,
like
yeah.
a thing. Yeah.
That was kind of my point, because it's like, because at the moment we're back on like
That trajectory again, yeah.
But I don't think it's a cool trajectory.
Yeah, but I mean,
Like-
to your point about what we were talking about before, Dimensions playing on the main stage of Tomorrowland,
Yeah,
which is the biggest electronic music
But
festival in the world.
what's cool about that?
No, but what I'm saying is,
he
it's
makes drum and bass.
what I'm saying is, it's
I'm literally-
signal in the market.
I'm
That's
taking
what it is.
I'm taking the piss, but
Yeah,
like
yeah.
when I look at that comparatively to like what
Spice
it
Girls
is,
getting
like,
turned away from
yeah,
the door. Yeah,
I'm
it's not the
like
same thing.
It's
I
like
mean,
night
yeah.
and day.
Yeah.
like it's, you know, basically, I don't know who's like the biggest thing in the world in dance music in general. Like,
Whoa,
Fred again.
Fred again,
At the moment.
probably. Yeah,
Fred
he's
again.
managed
And
writing
he's writing drum and
tunes.
bass.
Yeah.
And then you've got,
yeah,
and then you've got artists like Stormzy collaborating with Chase and
Chase and
Status.
Status.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, to a degree, like, whilst
Yeah,
The stocks are high in
Yeah.
D&B right now.
Yeah,
basically,
yeah.
yeah, we
But-
might not think all of it's cool, but yeah,
No,
there's
but I wasn't-
definitely a
I
lot of
wasn't
people that
talking
are
about
like,
cool, I
this
was
is
just
cool.
talking about- I was talking about
Yeah,
how
no,
big it
fair.
is again, like
Yeah.
in the
yeah,
mainstream.
it's, I think it's more, obviously, like it's a staple music of the UK.
Yeah.
Like it's been for 30 plus
Years,
years. So
yeah.
it's now, there's generations and generations of people who've grown up where it's never not existed.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Whereas from my generation, we literally saw it starting and evolving, and that was a very rapid evolution from like rave music in like 1991 or whatever to like, you know, optical in 1999. Like, even though it was quite a short space of time in the grand scheme of it,
Yeah.
it was kind of crazily rapid
The evolution
evolving.
of it,
Like it was
yeah.
just like and I personally think that goes for every music, and not just music, but like art in general, like movies and other forms of kind of art and culture. Is like it feels like, I can only really speak about the 90s because I was like, you know, a teenager, and I can remember it, and anything younger than that I wouldn't speak on the 80s because I was too young, or the 70s
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
alive. So, but it was like in every type of every music, pop music to the most underground stuff, every 18 months to 2 years max, it's just completely unrecognizable. It's completely changed. Like everything about it has changed. The sonics, the types of sounds they're using, the ideas behind it, and you know that goes for hip hop or jungle drum and bass.
Yeah.
And this is probably a bit of an old man miserable rant, but like
It's Rich's favourite.
I'm
don't worry.
here.
I kind of have a theory that like this is definitely nihilistic, but like that the peak of Western civilization was the 90s, and like that basically everything's been on a sort of downhill slide since then. Not even a downhill slide, just a sort of like stasis,
Yeah.
where it's like everything is
Getting recycled.
basically there's not much that like new like that happens where you're like someone invents a new genre of music. Okay, it happened with dubstep.
I think I kind of have a theory to kind of support that as well, is because I think technology has evolved to make things more convenient, not better. So as we were just saying before, everything about like when you're talking about, it costs $5,000 to put a studio together. Obviously, the music technology has evolved so much, but most of it's gone digital and made it just easier to more accessible rather than this now allows you to create this new crazy sound. Do you know what I mean? Like, some new sounds have been invented, but really it's more about the fact that me as a 16-year-old doesn't have to spend any money now to create music. It's just, and it's quicker, it's faster. Rather than like actually technology to help you do more. More innovation, if that makes sense.
True.
So I think it's because the technology is pointed at convenience rather than like improvement.
So I'm sure there's lots of sort of factors and geopolitical, social sort of factors and all that like play into this. But I'm always interested to talk to like young people, not you guys, really actually young people, like teenagers and stuff. Well, you're getting there. Come on, you're getting there. You're not new kids, not young kids anymore.
Yeah,
come on,
facts. It's
been around for a while. But no, talking to like young like 18, 19, 20-year-olds and like just sort of trying to just pick their brains about like their relationship with music, where when I was growing up, and I know this is true going back into the past, that like when you're a teenager, the music you're into was literally defined, it was your identity, like that was, you were at that head, like, do you know what I mean? Whatever you were into, that defined what you're going to wear, defined where you're going to go, who you're going to hang out with, the people you're going to meet, and all that sort of stuff. Whereas my experience now is like, if you ask a teenager what they're listening to, they'll just be like, just playlists. I don't know. Lo-fi hip hop playlist, like, or whatever. Like, it's just, they'll obviously have artists that they like, and but they tend to be really, really famous, like big artists, like world-known artists. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas for me, the whole attraction of drum and bass and jungle was this like mysterious thing that's made by these anonymous people. You can't even find a picture of them. It's just this like, it's just shrouded in mystery, and like that was super attractive and super fascinating. Whereas now,
there's no
we're doing
mystery.
stuff like this. Do you know what I mean?
Social media, there's no mystery.
Like literally, like, so I guess the first optical, I was really obsessed with optical and matrix in like maybe from like 97 to 99, and when they were like just sort of popping off and changing the whole game basically. And I'm sure he did it on purpose, but any photos there were of optical, of which there were hardly any, he was always obscuring his face, and like they were always quite abstract sort of portraits. Like even his picture of him in the Metalhead's tin box, and like any pictures you'd see in Music Magazine or Mix Mag or whatever, like it was always, you couldn't really tell what he looked like basically. So I'm like been absolutely obsessed with this dude's music for like 2 years, and the first time I saw him was when we booked him to play. And actually I walked into the club and I was like, who's that? Who's that guy? And Rohan, the Bassbin guy, was like, that's optical. I was like, yeah. What was really interesting is like psychologically, I presumed he would be really tall.
He's not.
He's like, he's like a god figure.
Because you just do that in your head. You're like, I think that guy's great. He's 6'4". Like, I don't know why, but
he's actually quite short as well, isn't he?
For some reason, you just think like this guy's going to be
massive,
towering sort of, giant of a man.
That comes from the mystery, like you said, doesn't it? Because you just don't actually know. So you have a fanciful image in your head of this person,
which is always
making.
much better than the real. Truth,
right? It'll always be underwhelming.
So
it's funny actually they were talking about that though, because in my day job I work in music tech, and one of the products we're building is aimed at like 16-year-olds and younger, let's say. So I actually had to interview a bunch about like what their ambitions are for making music and all this stuff, and actually to kind of go along with that as well, like it's more about sounding like someone these days as well now, because like it's interesting in like if you look at what's happening in the world of production, producers are now in like hip hop especially, and now coming to the forefront as much as the rappers are again, like it was in the 90s almost. So like, you know, your Kenny Beats, your like Hit Boy and all, they're like household names now. So there are kids that want to sound like ex-producer, but it's like, I want to sound like that guy rather than I want to do what he does and make my own beat. Which is quite interesting. And even in like the pop world as well, I was having this chat with someone the other day, like I feel like the 2000s pop aesthetic is back again. Like think about Charlie XCX, for example. She has actually taken the UK, like girls in the UK by storm, because like I'm seeing that lime green of her Albert artwork and Brat written absolutely everywhere. And it does feel like there's like movements again, but it's like, but it's not like a new thing. It's like how it was in 2000. Like when Britney Spears was like the hottest thing in the world.
Sure,
you know what I mean? It's like everyone wanted to be like her. I feel like Charlie XCX and people like that are kind of doing that again, but it's like they're doing it again rather than doing it for the first time.
The thing I always want to ask like young people when they listen to music is like, are you not sick of 808 drums?
Yeah, blame Kanye for that one, man. He made that whole thing, didn't he? Yeah.
Well, I mean,
popularized it in terms of like the.
I always the tune I think that popularized it into the world is "Drop It Like It's Hot."
Yeah,
for
that's
me,
Pharrell, right? That was Neptune's beat, wasn't it?
Neptune's,
yeah,
before,
Neptune's beat. That was before Kanye.
Before Kanye, yeah. Literally every fucking tune since then is a trap beat. You know what I mean? With the machine gun hi-hats and I get it
and the
because
chops
it's like
there.
super easy to make it sound absolutely massive and amazing.
Yeah.
But like I'm like, are you not just sick of that beat? Like, do you not just want to hear different drums and in different pattern at a different tempo?
Yeah.
Like it's all the same. Like I don't know.
Do you think, but
Grumpy
almost
old
like
man
predictability is like, it's like comforting in a weird way with that music, isn't it? Like, it's like, I know what this is going to sound like and I like this sound.
Pop music is kind of like that. Innit? It's just like there to be
But pop-
catchy.
I think
and just
pop
I mean,
is
what's
weird
the
because-
80s slow ballad? You know, that little arpeggiated synth. You hear it, and you
80s
just
slow
like,
ballad?
bruv, you know exactly the style. I can't give you an example, but like,
get your phone out.
there are those sort of like
That sounded like the bars you were
those
singing
obvious synthesizers that were used in those tunes.
Yeah.
That you just, the moment you hear it at the start of the tune, you just, I know exactly. how
It's
to
like
change
results
this
in your head,
sound.
doesn't it?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
get it. But at the same time, I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I listen to like a lot of hip hop, and you're right, like instrumentally, it's very narrow now. Like from the most part, like there are some cool producers like Kenny Beats, for example. I think he's really cool. He does some different stuff, but like, yeah, it has got narrower. But even me as like a music producer, I'm like, I kind of like it. It's like, it's just the formula that they've worked out just kind of works every time in a weird way.
Sure, no, I get it. I just find it odd that like it's lasted this long. 'Cause it's 20 something years of the same drum beat.
Yeah.
So that's like me in 1995 listening to a beat from 1970
Yeah.
and it's the same.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
exactly the same.
We've kind of reached singularity now, haven't we? In terms of like, it's
I know,
all kind of gone like that. Yeah,
It's funny, I mean, it's funny, but yeah. Anyway, old man complains about the past and future
I mean,
and present.
I think it's like when you look at it from like the kind of how fresh everything was not that long ago compared to now, and how there seems to be less risk taken and there seems to be more formulaic music. Is like you said, there's lots of factors I think are worth looking at as to explain why that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is, but
Then there is no answer. It's just podcast chat, innit?
yeah, it's waffle.
So I was going to ask actually. So you said Bassbin ended in 2005. Had you already moved to London by that point?
Around that time, I moved in 2006. So yeah, but I've been coming over a lot. And I kind of had enough of a network here that sort of
made sense.
Yeah, I could kind of like I was playing regularly at Swerve and regularly at Barumba for V, and it was enough. I had enough of a network that I knew I'd be able to get enough work, and I was 25, 26, so
Nice.
you can kind of live on the breadline for a while, and shared houses with other drum and bass folk to keep the rent down and all that stuff. But so it's they sort of happened at the same time. It's been wound down around the time I was moving over, but I'd already been releasing for 5 or 6 years of UK label releases by then, so I was already sort of relatively established by then. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess like so, there's obviously a couple of people that we know you've worked with a lot from, I guess, from Dublin as well. So obviously Beta Tube, Steo.
Yeah.
When did that link up happen?
Around 2005, around that time, basically.
Yeah.
So how I met Steo was another Bassbin resident DJ, and he's Steo's best friend. They're best mates since childhood, and
Nice.
from the same neighborhood. And Steo was actually in a hip hop band.
I think I remember him saying this. Yeah.
So he was like MC and would write some of the beats as well, and unbeknownst to me, would occasionally sing hooks and
Got
stuff.
a crazy falsetto voice. Yeah.
Well, the story
sort of-
basically, the story was like he came down to the club, like our mutual friend Mo would introduce him to Bassbin, brought him down to night and stuff, and he kind of exposed him to drum and bass for the first time, and he really liked it. And Steo's one of the like absolutely like loveliest human beings in the whole world.
Fact.
Yeah.
We're suspicious. It's like what's up? He's like, he's handsome. He's super nice. He's great family. Like, you know, he's like, what's this guy has to have a flaw somewhere. I keep asking his wife. He's like, come on, what's wrong with him? Seriously. But no, he's just an absolute diamond of a guy. But he gave me like he's like, oh, here, you know, there's some beats, like kind of sketches and stuff. He was Fruity Loops at the time.
No, that's big up.
And he gave me a CD with like 300 beats on it. All just like lo-fi sort of, all different tempos, but sort of lo-fi hip-hop predominantly, I guess. And one of them was this little like 30-second sort of deep house, kind of Rhodesy house idea with this looping vocal on it. And this was around the time of sort of like Justin Timberlake and all was popping off, like the Neptunes album was popping off. And I was just like, rang him up immediately. Where'd you sample that from? Like that vocal. And he was sort of like shy. He was like, oh, that's me singing into my mum's computer in the front room. Like, you remember those skinny little grey?
Yeah.
I think it was into one of them. And I was just like, get your arse down here right now. And first day, and he brought samples as well. The first like session we did was Refusal.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
And that's the first drum and bass you done, no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the very first one. Yeah.
So sick.
And then, like, you know, so I ended up sort of like shoehorning him into this like drum and bass vocalist singing career when he's not actually a singer. Like,
He's
you
a
know,
rapper producer.
He's a rapper producer
Yeah,
who
yeah.
like sort of like, I can actually sing amazing in falsetto, like, so, which is my favorite. So, like boys singing like girls is the best thing. In my opinion.
Very like late 90s, early 2000s R&B. And
like Dwelle and
Yeah.
Eric Roberson and all those guys are like, that's my absolute bread and butter. Like, so yeah. And for him too as well, that was the thing is like all of our taste in music outside of drum and bass is
super
identical.
aligned.
Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was just a really easy marriage, if you like. And like, it's great because if someone is making, you know, with singers and stuff, I'm sure everyone has had this, well, not you, but us three have had this experience of like, you know, you're working with singers who are just singers, as most of them are. There can be a slightly different sensibility when someone's actually makes tunes themselves. Like, they kind of understand like sampling and like, you know, they can sort of think of their voice as an instrument, basically, rather than like, you know, this is my song and here are the words, and you know, it's the sort of star of the show. He's kind of understands that you can use little loops and vocal chops and like all just use it as texture or as sort of sounds basically, like so. Yeah,
Better understanding of the relationship between their voice and the instrumental, and not just kind of what they're
That's actually
sitting on top of
That's
it.
actually
Yeah,
very
yeah.
tricky. We've done one tune with Steo. Actually. One.
I
It
remember
was on
that
our
one.
first
Yeah,
album.
yeah.
And actually, I remember he sent like just a track of like just loads of like little bits, and I was just like, it was so sick. Actually, this all come back to me as you said that. Yeah,
literally Refusal, like that tune. I basically I'm sure he actually played the little like the intro is like a sample of his, and I just transposed it on the keyboard, and he like kind of played that little intro hook thing with it.
Yeah.
And I just like literally went out of the room, left him in the room, 10 minutes recording, just loop the tune and just sing, do whatever you want, whatever comes into your head. And he would just do like 2 or 3 freestyles like that, and then I'd go back and find something, see if there's anything that's good, and then found the little hook of Refusal in it. And I was like, oi, that's something. And then get him back and do layers and multi-track it and all that stuff. But
Sick.
yeah, so it was just a really like sort of serendipitous meeting, basically. Do you know what I mean? It was he never intended to be a sort of drum and bass, guy, if you like, you know what I mean, or a drum and bass actor or anything like that. But
Yeah.
I'm glad he is.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we're glad he's in there as well.
Yeah.
Man, what a guy.
I mean, thinking about the amount of tune, the discography is mad.
It's also nice that you guys have kind of both come together on, and we'll talk about North Core, I'm sure, in a bit, but like it's also nice that you've both kind of found another home on North Core as well with like other like-minded producers and obviously
Yeah.
T at the helm. And
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was, I'm trying to remember the order of other people doing tunes with Steo after me. So I'm pretty sure it was AI.
I was about to say.
Because
Yeah.
obviously they released our first thing.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, 'cause that was an integral, right?
Yeah, it was like
wasn't it?
number 1. No, number 2.
Yeah,
It was
early.
Survival.
You had the Calibre
They were
remix.
straight in there like, oh, this guy.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, and look, they're really close mates of mine, and like we've been sort of, in tandem or parallel for pretty much
Yeah.
our entire careers. So, they had the courtesy to ask me first, which is nice.
That's
even
nice.
though it's a weird one, isn't it? Because it's like if you find a vocal talent, you don't own them.
No.
You don't have any. Power over them, if you like.
It's a pride thing, though, isn't there? When
Well,
there's a little bit.
I don't know, is it like sort of like
yeah.
I don't know, sort of like mafia rules or something? You know what I mean? Like there's got to be some honor amongst the thieves. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I feel like it's less like that
It's
these
like a
days.
gentleman's agreement almost or something.
Yeah.
I
And
feel like more respect back in the day with that one.
Yeah, but like a good example would be like, for
I don't
example,
know.
like
lots of people just would just literally go straight to
yeah,
the singer.
I don't know. It's like, for
Really?
example, the tune you do with Iama.
Yep.
That for me, like, if I wanted to do a tune with Iama, I would be like, oh, by the way,
But I
know you'd be cool with it, though.
But I wouldn't. Not to say I would expect that, but
Yeah.
I would do the same to you. But that's
Yeah.
because we're boys.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Whereas
if
it's that kind of conversation,
it was
isn't
a
it? Yeah.
producer I knew of but didn't know on a personal one.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I would expect it or
You'd
feel
find that
obliged to
weird.
do it.
Yeah,
I just feel like it would be a bit
You
weird.
would
Yeah.
find that weird because
Well,
obviously
yeah.
they're also the vocalists of their own person
Exactly,
as well.
exactly.
They do it
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah.
But like obviously, yeah, like if you're boys like that. it would
Also,
be
in
like-
the internet generation, it's just like you just hit people up through
Yeah,
the
for
fucking
sure.
void, going, "Do you want to do a tune?" Like,
Yeah.
it's as simple as that.
The
really.
thing that annoys me about it is like I don't want this whole podcast to be me moaning about
Mate,
stuff.
bring
but
it
like,
on, bro. I'm here for it. Trust me. This is
Someone's got to knock Rich off of his moment.
Trust me, it's calm.
But no, I've always thought, and drum and bass for some reason has always been like this. Maybe because it's predominantly populated with sort of socially awkward men, but it's there's always been this, like, I call it like a massive amount of laziness in the producers actually doing the work and going out and finding new talent.
Yeah.
And culturing and cultivating it and
Yeah.
and all that. It basically would always be the way is like a singer would find their way into drum and bass somehow. They'd have a big tune, and then every drum and bass producer
Does a
would
tune
wanna
with
do
that
a tune with
person.
that singer.
Yeah.
And then that singer's rinsed.
Yeah.
And I just find, and it still happens today, and I personally find that really annoying because it's like,
Stale in it.
especially in now, like back then you'd have to actually go to like
Shows and
open
stuff.
mics and like
Yeah,
you'd be
yeah.
going to Camden on a Tuesday to see open mics and see if there's anyone good, and then you have to like approach this person and like, you know, not come across like a serial killer and all that stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like, and try and like, you know, come across
been
that
watching
like
you.
you're legit. Like,
No, but you're not wrong. I mean, it's
No,
so
it's
much
facts,
easier
though.
now to stumble across new artists. Like, it's as simple as I like this artist, go on their Spotify and click on fans also like 3 times.
Do you know what as
Yeah,
well?
Go down a little rabbit hole
Tom-
before you know it, you found an artist you've never heard of.
It's even easier than that as well because like Tom literally did that. We had a call with Shogun earlier today to talk about projects, whatever, to talk about like vocalists and stuff.
Yeah.
And me and Tom have a playlist of just like tunes that we like that
Yeah.
aren't drum and bass related.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
like with like cool vocals, whatever. Tom literally went on the Spotify, looked at all the ones that said London. We're like, they live in London. We can do a session with them.
Yeah,
like, the
yeah.
sort of artists that
Perfect.
never worked in drum and bass. Like it's that
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah.
So like.
it is.
It's
and
that
there's
easy, yeah.
How much, like, forget about Spotify, just on the social media, there's like this island, and not that you're restricted to this island, but
Yeah.
this island alone is absolutely bursting with talent.
Yeah.
And every day there's a new talented person putting themselves out there. And
Yeah.
all it takes is having a bloody smartphone and an Instagram account or whatever and being able to go and talk to people.
Yeah.
And I spend a lot of time doing that and like trying to find new voices and like, you know, cultivating those relationships to the point that they feel comfortable. And invariably, if they're good, there's gonna have some annoying manager person who's got a big plan for them, and like you coming along
relate
and
to
go,
that one
hey,
as well,
do you want
to
to
be
do a drum
fair.
and bass tune? The artist generally does, but the managers are like, well, I don't know if that's gonna upset our big plan and all that sort of stuff. So, but I do. It still does sort of get to me a little bit when I look. If it's someone who's a really tight mate of mine, who I've got a long-standing relationship with, another producer, and we both are mutually like fans of each other's stuff and all that.
Yeah.
And they call me and they're like, look, that singer I think that you got on that tune, I think would be like absolutely perfect for this thing. Like, would you mind hooking me up? Or, you know what I mean? Like, and they're very, polite and stuff about it. And that's cool. Like, you know what I mean? Again, I'm not going to cock block some singer as well from getting theirs. So it's a tough one, but I do have a sort of subconscious thing of like, if I find someone, we do a tune or two tunes, whatever, together, and then in a year's time they're on like 40 different people's tunes, that will be the end of me doing tunes with that person. Like, you know what I mean? So I guess it's a sort of an evolution, natural enough as well. But I just think like your job as a music producer, like a real music producer, not like a guy fiddling around with buttons in a room on his own. I mean, an actual music producer. That is your job, to find talent and to bring it together and to orchestrate it and to like manipulate it into getting something good at the end.
Yeah.
Right? So I like to what's the word, like make analogs with music with football and everything in life. Whether it's music or just any aspect of life. But if like the producer is the manager of the team, and like the players, I'm talking about like not dance music necessarily, but like Quincy Jones is my hero, right? My musical sort of hero, basically. And like watching him making Off the Wall and Thriller, he's just in the room, and it's just, he's not touching anything, he's not playing any instruments, he's not sort of doing anything physically. He's gathered the best people and who he trusts, and he trusts their musical sensibility, and he's just like creating the environment and then just sort of like shaping the whole thing into something amazing. And he's the one who has the ear to go, that's amazing, let's do that. And for me, that's what a music producer is. And I think the way we all use the word music producer is not really that necessarily, or it doesn't have to be that. Like, it's essentially you're like a composer,
like a beat maker or whatever,
engineer or something like that. But especially as I've now moved the last number of years into making all these other genres of music, trying to take that approach to it, using loads of musicians and vocal talent as well, and like really trying to be that, having the idea and having Rick Rubin has a great one about it. Like, guy's interviewing him and he's like, so what do you do? And he's like, I have no musical talent.
Yeah, don't play instruments.
Don't touch it. I don't know any of the buttons of any machines. He's like, so what do you do? And he's just like, I have confidence in my own taste, basically, to know what's good, like objectively, and what isn't, basically. And that for me is the most important thing about being a music producer. It's making those decisions, like all the decisions, basically, but just having the confidence to go, yeah, this is good. And that comes with time, and it comes with experience. It might be innate. It might be just something some people have and some people don't. But that's sort of, for me, the crucial thing about writing music is you have to be confident in your own decision making. Do you know what I mean? Because if you're not, you just sit there, question yourself, and like, talk yourself out of doing it, basically. Do you know what I mean? Or like ruin your vibe or whatever. But you have to, know when something's good or not. And if you're, especially if you're coming from DJing, that should already be in your repertoire. That's what DJing is as well. It's just like
tastemaker, basically.
Basically, yeah.
It's interesting that you talk about that, like the idea, the role of a music producer, because obviously you've done a lot of collaborations with other like beat makers or producers, but also like with musicians as well, right? And like session musicians. There was that EP you did with that Andre guy, which I thought was quite an interesting project. Was that on North Quarter, that one?
That was North Quarter,
an album, wasn't it?
It didn't mean to be an album, but it became one.
I mean, maybe talk a little bit about that, because that feels like it was kind of along that.
Yeah, it was. Well, that's so.
That path.
I'd say the first sort of instance of me really taking like that approach to production was the Searchlight project, which is myself and Dom Beta 2.
Yeah.
Did it for Goldie's other label.
Yeah.
And that was and that was all like, you know, using. So we would basically make beats as we would independently. Me and him would swap beats back and forth. And then when we got to a point where we're like, okay, we need like real musicianship, or, you know, we've plotted in like a bass line or something with a synth, and then give it to a bass guitarist and get him to actually play the whole length of the tune. And don't loop anything. Like, just leave the full take, so you get all the human
mistakes basically.
Yeah. And so that was sort of the big experience of like using lots of different players and trying to like translate that, like, can you just make something in the box and then turn it into something that sounds like a bunch of humans in a room all playing at the same time.
So you get the blueprint. You get the blueprint digitally.
Yeah.
And then you kind of getting a bunch of people who, again, like you said, you trust or you know, or you find the talent, you source it, and then you give them the blueprint in order to create.
Yeah, well, and it could be either like, sometimes it would be literally like, you know, we've sampled like a piano or something, and we retranspose some piano and like get pianists to like replay it. And then other times it would be like, here's just the real simple idea, like, do whatever you want, and like just get them to play until you hear something that you're like, okay, let's use that, and then you develop that, and sort of goes on from there. But yeah, the important thing is finding people that already have the same musical vocabulary as you, so you literally don't need to explain stuff. You just sort of, you can maybe reference a tune, like,
They just get it.
go, give me some, you know, like heatwave type chords or whatever, like, and they'll be like, okay, I know what you mean, like, blah, blah, blah. That's super important. And yeah, because trying to get, like, lots of people are good musicians, but you need someone who's a good musician and who gets what you're trying to do and sort of knows all the same influences and stuff that you do, like, intimately. Otherwise you could get pretty frustrated, because you might be trying to get something and they might not kind of have a reference point for that, and they're just trying to do their thing, what they think is right. And also, like, I've learned from working with musicians, some of whom are self-taught and some of whom are like formally trained, and it's funny that sometimes the formally trained musicians are sort of in this kind of like prison in their mind, basically, where there's music we all like that's been made on samplers and stuff, where like there's something technically musically wrong with it, like a note, a bass note that's not actually the right bass note.
It's not in that scale or whatever,
but actually it sounds sick. Like, for what's coming to mind straight away is that Cold as Ice, the hip hop beat. Do you remember that? From the bass line's completely out of key.
Yeah, it's completely out of key.
Completely out of key.
No, it actually is. I've always thought that when I listen to that tune.
It sounds amazing.
Yeah.
It's a vibe though. It sounds good. So I've had the opposite way around, like, where I'm like, you know, there's a tune and there's a bass note, and, you know, someone classically trained pianist, for example, is like, oh, it's not the right route now. You know, yeah, but it sounds good. It still sounds sick though. Like, you know what I mean? It doesn't. Sometimes it can be a negative, basically. But Andre, anyway, Ange, the pianist. So I've actually lived beside this guy for 10 years and didn't know it. And we literally live like 2 doors down from each other. And there was I've told this story a few times, but there's another. We live in a sort of apartment block thing, and in Kilburn, and there was this that's still there. He's still there, and he's still doing it. This guy who thinks he's a DJ, who has, but he likes to do it with all the doors and windows open all the time.
Nice.
And no, it's really not. And yeah, basically he'd been doing this like all summer.
What's he playing though? Like, what music's he playing?
So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's music that's playing when I don't want to hear music. So, even if he plays good tunes, sometimes it's besides the point. Anyway, he had this like 14-hour long party one day that started as like a sort of barbecue in the day, or sort of a kids party in the day. And at 5 a.m. it was like screaming and fights and glass breaking and just like, and booming bass just coming into everyone's wall. And it's a pretty hectic area anyway where I live. There's lots of crazy stuff happens. But what I tend to do is if I'm being kept awake at night by some madness that's going on in the area, is go on Twitter and just start keyword searching and see if anyone else is complaining. I don't know why I do that, but somehow it makes me feel better if other people are complaining too.
In it together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I go on and I see this guy, Andre Louie, and whatever he had tweeted was like, it was just obvious that he's in the same block, right?
Yeah.
And then seeing he had a YouTube link on his Twitter, just clicked that and started listening to what his music was, and I was like, oh my God.
This guy's sick,
He's bloody Stevie Wonder. Like, this is insane. And he is blind from birth as well.
Yeah, I remember.
Double down on the Stevie Wonder analogy. But and like literally started chatting, and he's a super organized guy. He has like all the stems of every single idea he's ever done for the last 15 years on a server.
Wow.
So he's like any tune. Yeah, he has to be super organized because it's all he's operating his studio's computer by ear.
I guess,
So it has to be sort of like, and he's just that guy anyway. He's a very organized dude, and so he's just like, just go to the YouTube channel, and like he's like, oh, it's always been my dream to be sampled as a musician. Like he loves the idea of people sampling him, which is not necessarily always the case. Like that some people don't want to be sampled, but and I just started going through his channel, and I was like, God, there's loads of stuff here I would rip. Do you know what I mean? And either some of them are just straight samples from the song, the full song, and then other ones I've gone and got the multi-track and found the element I wanted. And yeah, like that was September, and we handed in the album at Christmas.
That's nuts.
Which I've never, ever done. And we didn't, as I said, we did not sit down to write an album. We just started doing tunes. They were just coming so fast that he's also incredibly quick. Like literally, I'd go, okay, right, I've arranged the beat. It needs do a pass of plain roads or whatever. Like it needs a roads bit in this section or whatever instruction I'm giving to him. And we're not in the room together. I'm above him, but we have a shared folder on Dropbox. I just put the tune in the Dropbox. I'd go make a cup of tea, have a smoke or something, or like go to the toilet or something. Come back like 2 minutes later. He's like, right, it's up on Dropbox. Parts on Dropbox. He's literally just like record one time.
Sounds like you're both working very quickly at this point and probably like inspired by each other, and it's just like a spiral effect in the right direction.
I mean, we're both like, our work flow, I guess, is very similar. We're both sort of impatient, want to get the thing done quickly. Yeah. Don't like longness, and like, jump on it while it's hot and get it done quickly. Yeah. And then move on to the next thing. So yeah, we've been able to write a crazy amount of music because of that. And yeah, it's just like if that neighbor hadn't existed, I might still not know he exists. And none of that would have happened.
Crazy.
So,
there you go.
All very strange.
There's a lesson in there somewhere. I don't know what it is, but there's a lesson.
It's hate, out of hate comes jazz. I think something like that. Something like that.
That's the title of the episode.
Our mutual hatred of this guy goes together.
Created magic.
Peace and harmony. Yeah.
I'd be remiss to talk about collabs with you if I didn't ask you about what it's like to write a tune with Calibre.
Yeah.
You knew it was coming.
Of course, everyone wants to know.
You knew it was coming, yeah.
So yeah, I basically...
Firstly, how did you meet? I guess you're both from Dublin, right?
No,
he's from Belfast.
Oh,
he's from Belfast,
and I'm from Dublin, yeah. So how we met was again around that time that Bassbin was kind of transitioning from just being a club into us being a label, was right around the time that he was just being picked up by Fabio, and we met through. Look, the scene, you can imagine, the scene was microscopic in the whole island of Ireland. So we met through some mutual friends and hit it off. Also, my dad's family are from Belfast and stuff, so some sort of connection to the place as well. But and then we would just end up like he would come down and play in Dublin, or I'd go up and play his night in Belfast, and we just hit it off. You know what I mean? And there was literally 3 people on the island making drum and bass. So it was like kind of obvious that we were all gonna link up, basically. And I mean, doing tunes with him was amazing, and I learned loads, as you can imagine. And the main thing I learned from him was, first of all, this is all still sampler era when we were doing tunes together.
Yeah.
And as I said, it would take you a week, 2 weeks to make a tune. He would do 2 or 3 in a day. And like we were all like me and Marcus and Clute and all were just like, how is he doing that? Like, how is that possible? Like one example was one time I was like, right, I'm going to be up at your house at whatever time, 3 in the afternoon or something. And something happened. There was an accident on the road or something. And I was much later than I said. It was about 2 hours later than I said I was going to be. And I arrived at his house and I go in, and he used to like the studios in the attic and the check chains down the ground floor and living room. And he's in the living room just sort of like listening to this like dubby roller thing that's obviously him. And I was just like, oh, that's cool. What's this? He's like, you said you'd be here 2 hours ago. So this
Just made a whole tune.
yeah. So he's like, basically, this is the beat I started, like, because you have to do that. You couldn't literally go, right, let's start going through kick drums.
Yeah.
You have to, like, if either of us are going to each other's studios, you'd have to have beats prepared already.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just too long. Like, it just took way too long and time wasting. So we would, so that's just, like, you know, he was able to just roll out tunes at a faster rate than anybody. And I really liked his sort of ethic was basically, first of all, finish every tune. Doesn't matter if you think it's crap, finish it. Just roll it out to 5 minutes. Now it's 3.5 minutes.
Yeah.
Even less work.
2.5 minutes.
Yeah,
now,
but it was basically it was like roll it out. Doesn't matter if you think it's crap or not. Some of the tunes of his tunes that he thinks were absolute toilet have become some of his biggest tunes, right? So
Yeah.
Okay.
like it almost doesn't matter to a degree if the person who made it rates it or not. Dillinger is a great example of that. He used to not rate any of his music. I think he's still like, he doesn't really rate any of his back catalog at all. And like, you know, that just broke all of our, what are you talking about? Like, he made the greatest drum and bass of all time. And he's like, you know what I mean? So it's just, everyone has a different relationship with their own music than the rest of the world.
I think that's
has with
natural.
it.
I think that's natural for
Of course,
everyone, right?
Yeah.
You're going to be more critical of it, but that sort of discipline of like, just finish every tune, even if it's crap, just roll it out. And then he's like, so if you do 10 tunes in a week, 6 or 7 of them will be shit. You know, 3 or 4 of them, you know, 2 or 3 of them will be all right.
And one will
maybe
be
1 or
good.
2 of them will be really serious.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like, you know, it's kind of like, again, it's a sort of like a training, like a discipline or something. It's like football training or something. Like you just gotta like take 100 shots a day after training if you're gonna get better at shooting, like get better at scoring goals. So
It's been a theme, I think, of our last 4 guests, maybe,
Is it
or
really?
3.
It's a different approach and
Different approach in terms of how they
which is
execute,
really
but
interesting.
when you boil it down,
yeah.
Sattel particularly springs to mind. He had a very
Hardcore,
different.
Josh, they've all said it.
He was sort of like
Yeah.
regurgitating things from old tunes and bringing them through. This is actually the first time that someone's been like, finish every tune, which I
Yeah.
actually kind of rate. Like,
Just
it's a
kind
bit
of
a different
roll out
approach.
every idea. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
go 100% finished, but
Yeah.
like roll out.
Make it so you could play it out.
It's a
basically.
playable version.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because basically how it would go, I go up to his house, we do tune. This was in the days where he was still drinking booze, and which he has not been for a long time. Basically, the session would be we'd make tunes like all into the middle of wee small hours, like till 4 or 5 in the morning, whatever, drinking and smoking up like the whole time. He'd crash out. Oh no, sorry. When I'd arrive, he'd play before we started making tunes. He'd be like, you know, I'm like, okay, it's been 2 months since I've been here, so you've got like 700 tunes here. And what he would do would be like he would play me the ones he liked of his own tunes. And the ones he likes of his own tunes are rarely the ones I like of his tunes. Like his favorites are always these really like esoteric, like deep, emotional sort of, not necessarily clubby, useful clubby things.
Yeah.
Basically,
Yeah.
the DJ is always looking for ammo, like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So as
yeah.
much as I love that music and I'd take it, it's these little weird, like, just off the cuff rollers that he would do that he would be like, that's garbage, like. And I'd be like, no, it's sick. Like, it's
Yeah.
just a little cymbal bass line and a drum beat, basically, but it's badass. And
Yeah.
he would just be like baffled that some of the tunes I would take, and you know, a lot of those tunes ended up on shelf lives in recent years and stuff like that. So it was an interesting lesson of like, you know, one, don't over criticize your own music or your ideas while you're writing them. Obviously, you know, you've got to have discernment.
It's got to be a level, yeah.
Yeah, but the idea of just roll it out, just finish the idea and it's there. it doesn't matter if that tune, anything ever happens with it. You might just go back and be like, hey, that tune's crap, but the drums are really nice. Or like there's one sound in it or one little thing I did in it that's really cool, and you can use that later in something else. But that was the main thing I learned from him. And then the other one was just like knowing when enough is enough. And like, you know, I remember one track we did, and it's literally just like a beat, a bass line, a vocal that I had, and one little sort of like white noisy sort of sound effect thing, and that's it. And it's just 2 chops of this sort of string sample, different chops of this string sample is the whole tune, and just filters and effects and stuff. And I was like, should we put in a crash or something? Like, you know? And he was just like, why? Just like, it's fine, doesn't need it. And you're like, yeah, I suppose you're right, it doesn't, does it? Like, and so he's like, that's what he's that's his genius, is like just knowing like
simplicity side of it.
That's enough. Stop.
I think most of my favorite producers in D&B, like when I think about like Breakage and like even like Skeptical, Calibre, they all make different music, but that's probably the theme.
Less is more.
Less is more, innit?
Yeah,
and the thing is, like, I think me and Tom, looking at how we've come a long way in making music, we were always like, because technology is so readily available and there's so many sounds, we used to throw every sound at a tune. And then, like, you know, if there's enough layers, there'll be something interesting happening there. But, like, it's actually way harder to do that with. But it makes the tune better. So it's so true, man.
I mean, I'd agree with that, like that. Before I started working with him and other people, obviously I picked up stuff from working with all sorts of different people, like just different approaches. And one of the main big sort of like click revelation moments for me was the way you used to always do a tune was like you'd have 16 bar loop starting at bar 0 to bar 16. You'd write your beat, you get samples or music or whatever, like you get all the layers of everything, and you're just sort of muting channels to sort of get an idea of different sections of the track.
Arrangement,
And then you start arranging the track like out, like you copy out, you do some changes, you copy that, you did it. And I realized that was really stupid. First of all, you should just get the 16 bar loop, you mute everything and copy it to the 6 minutes or 5 minutes, and then just make the tune by unmuting stuff. But the other thing was, the other thing, I lost my train of thought, but the other thing was, what was it? Oh yeah, that was it. You used to start the tune at the start of the tune, like writing the tune at the start of the tune. And then I can't remember who it was I was working with, and they just started the tune, they just did the last 8 bars before the drop and the 16 after the drop. Like they'd start writing at bar.
Oh, that point,
You know what I mean? And you just literally work on that section, because the amount of times it'd spend where you'd be working on this loop for ages and the music sounds great and beats sound great, and then you go to, and maybe even the bass line running underneath sounds good too, and then you go to actually plot it out, and the point where it drops and the bass line comes in, it's
like underwhelming or something.
Like, it's shit. So that's a shorthand thing of like, work on that moment, because everything else in the tune is just sort of like versions of that anyway. And like, if that bit works, that's all that, especially drum and bass, that's all that really matters. Like, and you end up like not wasting loads of time where you're like writing an idea that you think is really cool, and then you get to the bass line bit like 5 hours after you started it, and then you're like, oh,
you kind of lose perspective a little bit as well, don't you?
And you're kind of like,
that happens to me a lot sometimes. Like, you actually just lose respect for what the tune even was when you first started writing it as well sometimes.
So I sort of like, that's one of the things that drives me and I think makes me finish tunes, and a lot of tunes sort of quickly, is like, or I guess it stops me from going down like cul-de-sacs and like dead ends basically. So I work on that moment, if you like, almost immediately. Like once you have a beat and some sort of motif going on, get bass going straight away. And like, you know, find out if that's going to work, because we all know as
that's the moment. Really.
You know it, like you just know it in your bones, like when it hits, like it's a or it's meh. So just get to that bit straight away basically, and stop wasting your time, you know, potentially wasting your time anyway. So those 2 things I would say I learned from Calibre that were really useful was sort of don't put stuff in that's unnecessary, even if it feels like there's 4 channels in this track. Like, surely that's not right. It's like there is no right and wrong. You don't look at music. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. It's what comes out the speakers is all that matters. So That was a great lesson. And I mean, it was great fun making tunes. And we literally, if he'd come down to Dublin, the routine was he'd come down in the morning, I'd meet at the train station, which is the city centre, and we'd just do like all the record shops in the city.
Yeah.
Secondhand and new, whatever. And just his knowledge of music is crazy. Like, so he'd know basically what sort of genres or what obscure artists or whatever to search for.
Yeah.
And then it would literally be like, get a beat going and one person's on the beat and the other person's on the deck, just literally finding stuff. Happy accidents, a lot of happy accidents. So I do like miss that. That was a nice sort of, you felt like a kind of real hip hop producer, basically. You're going digging and then you're literally making a tune out of what you dug that morning.
Organic.
That's a nice, it's a nice segue into the bit. There's loads of stuff I want to ask you about. I think we're going to have to do a second part. There's so many things I want to ask you about this. But I'll ask you one thing before we move on to the Alias stuff, because I do want to cover that part of your musical journey. How, after all of these years, have you kept the interest? And I guess there probably will be points where you kind of like, drum and bass is rubbish or whatever. But like, I mean, maybe there hasn't been. But like, how have you like stayed motivated?
Yeah,
I guess
that's a good question.
Yeah,
good question. I mean, you definitely sort of,
fallen in.
I wouldn't say falling out of love is a bit extreme, but you definitely have periods where you'll be more on it and more sort of, I don't know, like plugged into it than others. I think for me, it's very much like I'm a DJ that learned how to make tunes, that learned how to produce so I could DJ.
Yeah.
That was literally the point. Like, I didn't have a burning desire to make music or be a musician or, it was like, I love DJing. And I've by 19, I'd played every place I could play in Ireland, like done. So it's finished after 12 months. I've already played every gig there is to play. I got it very quickly. I was like, if you want to be an international name, you have to make tunes that those guys are signing and playing and all that. And then you get to become one of them. And that's sort of, and at the time, the list of non-UK drum and bass producers in the world was Marky, Calibre, TB, me, and Peter 2. Like, that was it.
Yeah.
There was no non-English people in drum and bass. Like, and it was a big, like, whoa, there's a guy from Norway making drum and bass tunes. Or there's a guy from Ireland making drum. It was like a really weird novelty back then, which seems strange now because it's so international. And, the next good tune could come out of any corner of the earth, basically, whereas it was literally England, that's it. And and even certain snobbiness between. Like I remember Fabio saying the story of like the first time Hidden Agenda sent him a tune because they're from Newcastle. He got it in the post and he's just like, Newcastle? Like, seriously. And it was like, because it was so London and just London and Bristol and that's it. Any drum and bass comes from anywhere else, then it's
not good.
Second rate kind of thing. And he was wrong there. But which he quickly realised, I think.
Cool.
So, yeah. What was the question again?
How have you stayed interested? Motivated?
Yeah, so for me, it's basically like, this might sound a bit sort of cold or sort of, I don't know, reductive or something, but I'm inspired to make drum and bass because there's a show coming up that I want to play it at. That's it. That's literally it. So if that goes away, I will just stop.
Yeah.
Because I'll have absolutely no motivation to make it at all.
Yeah.
And especially now that I have other outlets for like musicality,
for
if you
creativity
like.
And stuff.
I don't need to, drum and bass for me is, it can be many things, but for me, it's music to make people dance loud and in a nightclub or in a big, whatever environment, in the right environment. That's the purpose of the music. Obviously, there's shades of it that can be not for clubs and all that stuff, but for me, that's what it is. That's the attraction of it. It has an energy and it makes people move and can create an energy in a room that no other music in the world can match in terms of intensity and energy. And it's an addictive feeling. Like, the feeling of playing a tune, of anyone's tune, and it going off is great. But playing your own tune and it going off, especially the first time you play it, when no one knows what it is and it goes off, there's no better feeling than like, busting up a whole room with your tune, basically. Like it's an addictive feeling, like basically, and it's not replicable with anything else, basically. So that's, I would say, what keeps me motivated to write drum and bass. But I definitely think having the other outlets now kind of makes it easier to maintain drum and bass in a way, because I don't have to do it all the time.
Yeah.
So I can dip in and out when I'm feeling inspired and not when I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm
I
still
definitely
writing
want to
music.
touch on that. So it's Brock Rogers is the main alias that I know about. Anyway, there's probably others.
No, that's the main
Yeah.
one. The Searchlight project was me and Beta 2, but Brock Rogers is just me.
And that's on True Thoughts, which is a wicked label in Brighton. They've had some mad people on that label as well. Like, it's a wicked label. Yeah.
I mean, I still sort of kind of pinch myself when I see some of the label mates like Moonchild and
Moonchild's going to say, did you remix them as well?
Well, without permission.
Edit.
I just did a bit like basically like Rob Louie, the guy who runs the label, is like super cool guy, really, really nice.
Also type with Shogun as well. You probably knew that though, right?
Yeah,
I think they do. They used to do
Publishing or
Shogun's
something?
publishing. Yeah, they may still do it,
I think
but
they do still,
yeah.
It's
Rob
up
is a good guy, man.
Brighton crew and stuff.
Yeah,
And
you know that tune we did with Ree.
Yeah.
She was on Truth Force. That's how we found her. Yeah.
So they've got like sort of divisions. They've got like, you know, people like Alice Russell, like these sort of big, well-respected jazz artists and stuff.
They had like the grime MCs as well, wasn't there?
They've released Flowdown.
Flowdown was on there.
They put a strategy EP out a few years ago as well.
Yeah.
It's really diverse. I kind of call it like, in the 90s, it was like Talking Loud was that label. Like Giles Peterson's label, Talking Loud was like, there was no genre. It was all different genres, but somehow all felt like it lived together.
Yeah.
So, they put out Represent album. They put out New York and Soul's album. You know what I mean? Just like this huge diversity of music that somehow all felt like it kind of could sit together and live together. So for me, True Thoughts is like the current day Talking Loud.
Yeah.
I'm super lucky to have had them have me on board and like on a sort of long-term deal as well.
How'd that come about?
Well, basically, he's a fan of Broken Beat as a genre of music, and it was I think it was actually Danny
Wheeler.
Yeah, I think it was probably like
he does the Wheel Up thing, doesn't he?
I sort of did a similar path to him of like made a Broken Beat tune and gave it to Bugs in the Attic guys, and they put it out on their label Cooperation. And then shortly after that, True Thoughts hit me up for... Actually, they hit me up for a drum and bass remix. That was it. They asked for a Zero T remix of this sick R&B duo they've got called Melonics. They were really good.
You did it. Have you done a tune with them as well?
They did a tune with me after.
Yeah.
I did a remix of one of their tunes on their first album, and I actually proposed the idea. I was like, okay, how about this? I'll do two remixes of two different tunes off their album in the two different aliases. Because I was basically, I'm just trying to get up at this stage of the alias. And so I did drum and bass one and the Broken Beat one, and both of them did really well. And like, pretty much just off the strength of that. And then he was like, are you interested in doing a sort of signing with us, basically? So I was like, yeah. And going right back to what we were talking about at the very, very start, when you're just like, you've worked with 700 labels. What's nice about this is like I'm getting to apply all this experience and all the mistakes and all the, what I perceive to be wrong ways of doing something to this now. And like, I can, basically just avoid loads of mistakes, isn't it? 'Cause it's like you're doing it all over again. So, and one of the main ones was like, I want to sign this to one label and that's it. I am that label and that's it.
That's cool.
It just makes more sense to... It takes a lot of the work out of your hands, basically. Do you know what I mean? You're part of a machine that's already set up, that's already got a huge following, that's already got a huge sway in the world they're trying to break into.
They've got everything.
And it's just like, happy days. I couldn't believe it, like when they offered it to me. So, and they've been amazing to work with, and they've had me playing at like jazz festivals.
I saw you played the one, and
Good Vibration, or what was it called? Love Supreme.
What was that? It was Brick Lane was a jazz festival.
Brick Lane Jazz Festival.
Yeah.
Love Supreme last 2 years in a row now.
Sick.
Good Vibrations next weekend, and My favorite gig of the year, though, is I've been booked for Meatopia Festival.
Jack's head popped up there. Sorry, what?
Yeah, I was like, oh shit. Okay, so
Is it like a
basically,
barbecue festival or something?
basically, yeah, on
my days.
Tobacco Docks in the last weekend of August.
Yeah.
There's a meat festival called Meatopia.
I think I've heard this, you know.
Yeah, and like
Yeah.
it's really random. I can't remember. Someone knows someone in drum and bass. Like if their friend is like the organizer or something, and they heard my album, they really liked it, and they wanted to book me for. They have music at the end of the day, kind of thing.
Sick.
And yeah, I think they had People Just Do Nothing or something last year. I was like, okay, it's gonna be a bit of a drop when I come on compared to that. But yeah, so it's for me, it's great. It's been like I've always been into that style of music. Like I was into it the first time around.
Yeah.
And I was sort of exposed to a lot of it because the guys who were making it were all like reinforced ex-junglist guys of 4 Hero, obviously, so the head honchos of it, if you like. So it's a funny like circle for me.
Full circle,
They're the
yeah.
very first people who ever released my tunes. 20 odd years later, I'm now sort of making the style of music they pioneered back then. That's now having a resurgence, and yeah, it's really cool, and it's refreshed me a lot.
I was going to ask, so from like a creative standpoint, obviously you said drum and bass that's a club dance music for you. Is there a creative goal with this stuff, or is it more just like an outlet, if you like, for kind of whatever happens? Obviously there is a genre that you put around it, but like, is there as much intention behind the musical writing there as there is with the Zero T stuff?
I mean, I kind of like try not to, but the sort of DJ in me ends up coming out when I'm writing music anyway.
Yeah.
I sort of like, you know, I kind of want the music to be playable for DJs, but I'm not sort of sitting down and like drum and bass where it's like literally built for mixing. Like it's not, you know, I'll definitely have more leeway, or I might do something that isn't DJ friendly, basically. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they've been super open. They've been just like, do whatever you want. Like they don't care. They're just like, do whatever you want. Like don't have to stick to a tempo, or don't have to, you know, stay in what might be considered broken beat or whatever. Like you can do whatever you want, basically, and which is great. But I don't know. I'm still retaining some of that. Like, I want it to be functional as well as just good music to listen to. I want it to make people move on a dance floor as well. Not 100% of the tunes, and I'm just starting the second album now, so I'll see. Basically, who knows?
Do you find so? Whenever I write tunes outside of D&B, it's like garage or hip hop or whatever. I always find that because I don't have the rules of that genre drilled in me as much as I do with drum and bass. That it almost feels like when you first started making music again, where it's almost like everything's a bit more discovery is like available to you. Would you say that you get like a similar thing?
Absolutely.
There?
Yeah. I'd say what I spend most of my time doing when I'm making other genre music, whether it's the like neo soul band stuff or this Brooke Rogers stuff, is my main thing I don't want people to say when they listen to it is, that sounds like a drum and bass producer made that. Yeah. Because a lot of the time, without, you know, picking on anyone specifically, but you know, I distinctly remember Martin. You know Martin.
As in my
3024, whatever.
Yeah.
Because he was a drum and bass promoter and all that, like for Holland for years, but like known him for a long time anyway. And I can't remember. Someone was playing him their not drum and bass album. And he just like walked into the room and he's just like, oh yeah, like what drum and bass engineer this? And it just like, because drum and bass is so difficult to make sound good and loud and clear and all that. You get into that, this obsession of that.
The mix down and stuff.
And all that. And if you do all that stuff in any other genre of music, maybe except for like GLXY bro step stuff, it sounds awful.
Too clinical, isn't it?
It sounds terrible.
It ends up taking character away from the music.
100%. Yeah. And
that's why I like making other genres. Like you just don't worry about that stuff.
It's literally like stopping yourself from doing all the processing, all that stuff. Shit. Like it's trying to be much more organic about it, and just much more like, again, having that like little Calibre thing in my head going like, it's fine as it is, like, do you know what I mean? It doesn't need any more. You don't have to like supercharge it to, you know, it's not the same in other genres of music. There isn't that sonic arms race that drum and bass has.
That's
which is
the
just
perfect
like,
way of putting it. Yeah.
it is an arms race. Drum and bass is an arms race.
It
like,
really is.
Always
yeah.
is, and I say
Yeah.
that to producers or whatever coming through is like, it's the only music that you can have an amazing song, and if it's not loud and it's not produced well,
Can't play it.
no one's going to play it.
Yeah.
No one in the world is
Or
going
they're going to put it in their own door and just whack another limiter on it and make it loud enough to play.
Yeah. But like, I mean, when you're going through tunes, you guys are going through all the tunes you're sent every week, which I'm sure you guys get.
Definitely
as
not
many as
all
me.
of them. Definitely not all of them. Yeah.
Well, no, I literally like give it about, I'd say like 0.2 of a second.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
as soon as I hear anything I don't like, I'm like, oh, like no.
Yeah.
It's crazy,
And
isn't
it's
it, how
almost
that
usually
works?
always the drums. Like
Yeah.
like if something's like, oh, this is nice, like I like the music and da 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 da, and the bass line's not shit, and then but the drums, if the drums aren't up to
Scratch.
because you just know if you're DJing in a club and you play the tune that does less intensity in the mix down,
And you mix it with a break tune or whatever.
the whole
Yeah.
dance floor just dies. Like so.
Yeah.
Do you skip to the drop when you do that? 'Cause that's what I.
Oh, I literally just go.
You have to,
Yeah,
everyone
you
does.
kind of have to.
Yeah.
42 seconds. You've got till about 45 seconds. But seriously,
And in
I
that
know.
time, if that tune can be mistaken for half a dozen other people's tunes, then it's not getting
yeah,
played either.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
That is mad. Isn't
So
it?
new
Like,
producers, that's the standards.
That's how much
that
time you have
all
to
our
catch an ear.
Patreon followers, us, we're sorry to give you a speech of information.
That's
Yeah.
the standard that there
That is
yeah.
literally facts. Like,
Yeah.
even I'm doing that, and I'm obviously not a touring DJ like all
Yeah.
the time, but I am mixing and shit. And that is exactly how ruthless I am. It's
Yeah.
like time is money, man. Like,
yeah. It's kind of like it's kind of crap in a way because like it does mean that it excludes people who can write good music but can't engineer well, and or they have to outsource that or da 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 da. And like, whereas in other musics, it's like no, they don't care about that stuff. It's just
Yeah.
like they're just like whatever, just turn up the gain. Like they don't seem to care. Like it's like techno or like house or like I'm not saying there's none of that in any of this, but
Yeah.
it's nowhere.
The focus is not there.
Yeah.
It's nowhere close. And generally, like the headroom in all that music is much bigger and stuff. So the amount of like, leeway you have on a mixer when you're DJing live is much, much bigger before stuff starts breaking up and all that.
Yeah,
But for me, it's the most important thing when you're making other music that's not drum and bass is the feel of it, because that's what drum and bass producers get wrong. Beyond just the processing of everything, it's the feel of drums.
Yeah,
the
I've had
looseness.
I was having a chat with who was it? Cesco at 985 Bristol this weekend,
yeah.
because obviously he's like, drums are super swung, super groovy, and we were talking about the fact that more D&B producers are making garage now, and the way you can tell is because
There's no
you
swing.
can tell there was a grid used in all of those
Yeah.
drums.
There's no
basically.
swing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you can, like, you really can hear it. Like, there's a lot of, that's sort of like, drum and bass guys making two-step now, and like, it's missing all of what made two-step good.
Yeah.
Like, it's literally like, what made two-step good is the drums are swung to death.
Yeah.
And
it's hard to mix it because everything's like slightly off.
Yeah, it's a nightmare. Yeah. And the broken beat stuff's very the same. It's pretty difficult to pull off like smooth mixes and stuff because, and I do this myself, is like I will, like you would think like, okay, the main kicks and snares are all going to be bang on and then everything else can be sloppy. I'm not even doing that.
Yeah.
Like the kicks will generally be bang on, but like if I've found like a jazz break and I really like it,
like
the
a live
pattern of it,
one, yeah.
but it's really like light, like it's not heavy enough to use as a main drum break in a tune, and then I'll get like another clean drum break with just like a tight room sounding drum break, and literally like visually by eye like move the snares and stuff so that they match
The jazz one.
the jazz break,
Yeah.
even if it's wrong, like it's missing, it's way off the grid, and trying to get the, you know what I mean? Like, so then when you turn off the jazz break, you got your thing that's just hits, but it sounds like a person. It doesn't sound like a machine. You know what I mean? And yeah, it can be a nightmare when you're DJing it. But like, so I guess that's the element I would like. I've sort of jettisoned it a little bit, that you would never really be able to do that in drum and bass.
At slower tempos, you can do that, right? But
Yeah.
174, that would be a mess.
No, you can't. And look,
Yeah.
even like, there is a lot more swing in drum and bass beats now. Like, do you know what I mean? Like your guys' beats and Lawrence's beats and the Ivy Lab stuff, and it's Sattles does it as well. Like, do you know what I mean? It's this sort of like swing is coming back into it, and there's more.
Yeah.
Well, people are realizing if you go and analyze like the classic drum breaks that everyone still uses, like Sandman break or Think break or something, and you study why does it work? Like what's magic about it?
It's because none of them were ever perfectly on the grid.
Yeah, exactly.
They're all
Yeah,
slightly off. It's all of those minor imperfections. isn't it?
Exactly, yeah. And like Sandman one, it's like way off. Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
the shaker thing is like not even close to being on the grid. That's why it sounds good. That's why it's rolling. And if you fix that, it immediately becomes toilet. Like it immediately sounds bad.
Yeah.
If you actually cut out every hit and put it correct, it loses everything straight away. So, but yeah, generally anyway, the Brooke Rogers stuff, it's just really nice to have a musical outlet that isn't drum and bass, basically. And that I can, I can see, I'd never do the big formal, like, I'm quitting drum and bass, like, retiring and have a ceremony and all that stuff. But I'd never do that.
You can sell out
one.
more shows doing that. Man.
Yeah, but
You can do a few
comeback
tours.
tours, whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah,
do
yeah,
actually.
it's
That might be
fashion.
good. Actually, I'm retiring from drum and bass. 1 year left. Book me.
Basic.
Yeah.
Basic ages.
Yeah. But if I don't make predictions basically about my own musical future, if you like. But if it naturally just atrophies away, I know that I have this other thing that's going on, that I have this great home for it as well. And it's enough to satisfy my kind of creative juices, if you like, going forward into my even older age.
Scratches the itch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
This is the most important thing.
yeah.
Do you want to do some quick
Yeah, I was
fire
going to
to
say, I've
end?
got like a
Alright.
billion other things I want to ask you, but we'll be here for 9 hours.
All right, we'll come back and do part two,
Yeah,
then.
we're going to have to do part two, because we didn't even talk about North Core, all these things
Yeah.
we're talking about. Like, there's so many things we haven't talked about. And I know
Got
people are going to be
about a
screaming,
third
like,
of the way
ask me
through.
about this stuff, ask me about this stuff. But yeah, let's, and also Jack, your iPad.
What ones are you going to do?
Yeah, so
Unglued's got a couple
basically,
more.
we asked some people in various group chats that we're in with other DJs and stuff, like who's got questions for you.
Okay.
And we've got a few. We're just going to fire them off.
Some will be quick, yeah.
Some will be quick. Well, I'm going to start with this one because this one had two people ask it.
Okay.
Hayden Illtruth and Adrian Sattel. Why?
Stop.
know-
Stop. I know what this is
Do you
going
know
to
what
be.
it's going to be?
Yeah.
What's the question?
It's going to be about cucumbers.
Correct.
I hate cucumbers
Why do you dislike cucumbers so much?
because they're just shitty melons.
Shitty man.
They're melons with all the sugar taken.
We
out.
were trying to get Jack to buy you one. John put in the group chat. Our
I was
group
like,
chat being
it's
like,
Kian's favourite snack.
his
Can you
favourite
bring one to? But
No,
I
look,
wasn't sure if it was like a
if
genuine
they're in a jar of vinegar and dill and all that,
Yeah.
I'm in.
Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah,
So we've got
yeah.
I'm in.
gherkins
But
to
just
come.
like fresh cucumber.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
It's weird. It's such a bland taste.
Yeah.
But
It's just like water.
But it's not though. It's like
fresh.
it absolutely dominates everything else. Like if I have a salad and there's like
All you can taste
just
is
a tiny few bits of cucumber in it, all I can taste is
Is that
cucumber.
with that the bit scraped out in the middle though? Like, you know when you DC the cucumber, and it's just like the hard
Any
bit.
of it, like just
Fair.
skin, flesh. It's just
I
it's
remember,
shit.
I remember having this conversation with you at Outlook, and your passion for disliking cucumbers was next level. And when we
Yeah.
put this in the group earlier, I was like, oh my days.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I've heard people passionately, like really passionately, express a distaste for many vegetables.
Not cucumber though.
Never
yeah.
a cucumber.
Yeah, but I
Never.
kinda
Weird
get it,
one.
though,
So like
like-
someone
It
made
is a
you
weird
a
one.
gin and tonic with what's the gin you use cucumber with?
I mean, but
I don't
yeah.
drink gin and tonic.
Okay, fair
But
enough.
yeah,
Well,
like,
that
you
answers
can
that
often
question.
English
get
man's
cucumber
drink.
slice
Yeah.
of cucumber and a gin and tonic.
Yeah.
That's an English
refreshing.
man's drink.
Yeah.
I wouldn't drink that.
All right, I just had to,
So I had to get some sectarianism in there somewhere. Sorry, lads.
Yeah, another quick fire want to be like,
Alright.
what do you have zero tolerance for?
I didn't
apart,
ask- I did
apart
actually
from
wanna ask-
cucumbers.
So very quickly, when did zero tolerance become zero T?
I can't remember exactly, but I want to say it was around the time my first album for CIA. I had been like when I was doing collabs and stuff, it would just get shortened. There's no like mystery behind it. Basically, it's just too long.
Yeah, fair.
And
yeah.
and there is, as I discovered after I started, because I picked that when I was like 15 or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was into like no U-turn, and I wanted to really like menacing
Tough
sounding
name, yeah.
And that phrase was brand new. It was in the news cycle a lot, like, and it was a new phrase. So it was topical, I guess. But yeah, then I started playing out with MCs, especially over here, and figured out that there is no word in the English language that rhymes with tolerance.
Is that actually
Don't
right?
try, and don't
Yeah.
you sit there and try big
Yeah.
words because there isn't one. It's like orange. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? It's like there's nothing. And
Purple as well.
basically you'd have MCs doing exactly what Rich is doing right now. Just like spending ages.
You have to like, half like honouring or something like
to
that,
try
you have to
and,
say it in
like-
like a weird way. Yeah, like,
It's just awkward, basically, and it's just
Yeah.
embarrassing for everyone involved. So, basically,
sick. I rate it.
So
and then
I
you
was
went
just
with
like-
tea, which has all of the fucking rhymes in the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was. I think it was a combination of that, and then being on these lineups, like big Planet V lineups and stuff, and when they used to still do, you'd see posters in the street and stuff.
Yeah.
And just seeing, like Brian G, Andy C, and then it would be like, what's that? And it's like me and artificial intelligence. This is long
Just
squiggle.
loads of little letters. Yeah.
So that's why, basically.
While on that subject as well, someone did actually ask, like, what's your opinion of A to Z billing?
I think it's racist. It should be banned forever.
Do you know what?
I hate it.
The funny thing about this is
Like
when
me and
Pete-
Voltage, just like, ugh.
I think that Pete asked about it. Yeah.
when they is that where he
Pete,
was?
like,
Pete,
Pete
yeah,
Overview,
because
yeah.
honestly, that one cracked me. Because do you remember how many times we've had this conversation? I'm like, I said to you, and I was like, I love it when you're on a lineup because
What,
if
'cause-
it's A to Z billing,
you're not the bottom of
I'm
it,
not
yeah.
the fucking last person on the lineup.
I know, yeah. I said like the best piece of advice if like a young up and comer was like, what's the best one piece of advice you could give them is like, call yourself Andy A.
Or just like AAA.
Career sorted.
Yeah.
One of the
Triple A's
Bassbin
been
residents'
done.
name was AAA. That
There
was,
you go.
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
Triple A's been done.
But Andy A, no, Andy A, or Aaron A. That's
Yeah, 'cause it's
AA.
AA.
Aaron A.
Amazing.
There you go. That's your DJ
That's
name.
a perfect DJ.
Yeah,
though.
exactly. Yeah. No, look, I get it. I mean, it gets rid of the whole
Billing.
dick measuring contest of like who's going to be higher than who and all that. So I understand it. But it's a little bit frustrating when your name begins with Z because it means you're kind of constantly at the bottom of the lineup.
Promoters should do A to Z one show and then Z to A.
Yeah, I
show.
was like, can
There
we
you
do
go,
reverse
swap it up.
alphabetical
I swear
sometimes?
I've
Someone
seen
did
that,
do it.
I think.
I've seen a
Someone
Z to
has
A,
done
yeah.
that.
I'm always in the middle in that case, so it's fine.
Yes, you clever.
Yeah.
Placements there, yeah. But you don't think of these things when you're a 15-year-old DJing.
Oh,
Well, no, like
Yeah.
we call
Yeah.
ourselves Galaxy, and like obviously I didn't think about like Ford Galaxy, Galaxy the chocolate, but there's loads of shit
Yeah,
with
yeah,
that
yeah,
word. So it's like a really common word, funnily enough.
Yeah.
And that's why Sattel, who did think about it, called
Yeah.
himself Sattel.
I know.
Like, that's
It's
not
not
a
a
word.
word. Yeah.
Super fucking smart for the
Yeah.
age he was thinking
Yeah.
like that.
He's
He had
annoying,
some, like,
man. He's
revelations.
got too many
Yeah.
good ideas around
Good
that shit.
one,
man.
yeah.
Jon GLXY had like 5 questions, so we've
You
already
asked
spoke about
kind
the
of a
Calibre
couple,
one. What's the favourite tune you've made? He's asked that. I'm pretty sure it's going to be very hard to answer. Or maybe it's not hard to answer.
Jesus, that is hard.
Yeah.
Probably.
Can we all
some-
say what our favourite tune that you've made is? I think we should do that as
All
well.
right. Yeah, you guys
Yeah.
start then.
Mine would be Refusal, probably.
Okay.
Yeah, just because it's so iconic.
I can't say the word Makusala.
Makusla.
Big rhythm on
That's my favourite one. Oh, actually, no, that's a lie. Go For Yours is my favourite. Me
Okay.
and Tom play that tune all
Me
the
and
time.
Icicle.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you and
yeah,
Icy. We
yeah.
play that tune
Yeah,
all the
yeah,
time.
yeah.
It's one of those two.
That's a good one.
Was it
yeah. Good pick.
Wolf Tone? Is it
Jesus,
Wolf Tone?
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Mate, that's a fucking smasher. I might have to get
Yeah.
drawn into the sets again. Same
hell.
album as Makusha, I think. isn't it?
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
a
it's the one with the
Section
golden
album.
ratio
Yeah,
artwork.
Golden
innit?
Section album. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's funny, you know, like I, with a couple of exceptions, pretty much any tune that's older than like 4 or 5 years old, all I can hear is what's wrong with it.
Yeah, that's normal.
But trying to put that aside, Refusal is definitely a special one.
Oh, to be fair, just remember the Ladders with Perez as well. That
Yeah.
was-
Oh my
play
that
that
was
tune
a
all the
fun
time as
one.
well.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
always
Man,
on
I,
the
actually
USB.
I play a lot of the music, like
Yeah.
old music still, especially. Like, yeah.
I think Roxy Music is probably a
Oh,
favorite.
shit, Roxy
Okay.
as
That's
well,
probably
of
a
course.
favorite of
Yeah,
the sort of
yeah.
older.
Also, there was a
stuff.
version of what's the tune you did with Rhea? You've done probably a few, right? There was an
Hurts?
alternative mix of one of the tunes that you did with Rhea,
Yes.
which I heard on one YouTube channel once,
Right.
And I never heard it and I didn't know if it was actually you that did it. Is it that "Wait for You" tune or whatever it's called? It's like the lyric says "Wait for You" in it. It's it's you and Rhea. It's like an alternative mix.
I do
Anyway,
remember we
I'm
did
gonna-
2 versions of one of the tunes.
and it's like one of them's like slowed down and like pitched down. I don't know if someone else did that.
Oh
but
no, I know what you're talking.
You know what
about.
I'm talking about?
I do. Yeah. No, that was me.
Well, that was actually you, right?
Is it sort of like a kind of like a lo-fi
yeah,
hip hop
but
type
yeah. So it was like a
with her pitch saying, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Can I have that tune, please?
Yes,
Super sick.
if I can find it. Yeah,
I maybe
yeah,
I
yeah.
heard it in a mix, maybe or something. I don't know where
I might have put it
originally-
at the end of a mix or something like that.
Super
yeah,
sick.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
There you go.
Fair play for remembering that. John. Your
Yeah,
memory is
Jesus,
mental.
yeah, I can remember more than I
Yeah.
can. But yeah, I guess favorite tune. I'm trying to think of like
Roxy Music's a big
Roxy
tune.
Music's a good one, but like in terms of like what stayed in my
Also, Morning
set.
Sex is a big tune as well.
yeah,
That's a
that the
big. That was
2016
CIA, right?
one,
Yeah.
as but I kind of I like, I don't know, I suppose like stuff like the Underground on Sofa Sound, like that recently, like,
Yeah.
just like really bassline roller, simple, like
Yeah.
much harder to do than to do like
What's the
musical
tune you
tunes.
did as well quite recently where I can't remember what it's called, but I play it quite a lot. It's got like a really chopped vocal, at the start of the tune. It's almost like a scat jazz person. You know what I'm talking about?
No.
This was like within the last 2 years this tune came out. It's like heavy, super heavy.
Oh yeah,
What's
give
it
me the
called?
loot.
Give me the loop.
Oh
That's
yeah,
big
yeah.
tune.
That's one of my favorites actually.
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
That one's I've never stopped playing since I think it's just because I haven't made a heavier tune than that.
Yeah, that's like
Yeah,
tune's
yeah.
real heavy.
It's
yeah.
a banger. Yeah.
And also that like sample at the start is so like it's such an earworm when it comes in as well.
yeah,
yeah,
well, it's
yeah.
older people will recognize it from old Prodigy tune.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
What is it, Charlie or one of those classic Prodigy tunes? But it's James Brown and some 80s. Like the track is taken from is not good, but it's got the beatbox thing basically.
Yeah,
It's like, it was used a lot in rave, like old rave.
yeah,
tunes.
yeah. It sounds like it would have been.
It's
Yeah.
sick. It's a sick little loop.
Good question, Josh. He also said, I mean, how have you stayed prolific for writing music for so many years? We kind of spoke about that.
Yeah.
Last one. He said, you're watching a sunset on a beach somewhere beautiful. What's one track you would draw for? And this could be any, it doesn't have to be any, it could be any.
Well, my like ultimate, like if you could only have one song for the rest of your life, is Mary Jane Girls All Night Long.
Big tune, to be fair.
Yeah.
Can't not listen to that tune and not be in a better mood than you were before you started listening to it.
Yeah.
I just love absolutely everything about it. The beat is like iconic. It's why it still gets sampled by R&B producers today.
Yeah.
It's the backbone of like most 90s R&B tunes is that beat.
Yeah.
But just everything, the vocal, the bass line, the vibe of the tune, the Rick James production, like it's just perfect. So that's always my go-to. Like if there's only one song I can ever listen to again, it would be that.
Amazing.
Sick.
I think that's a good way to end. Well, actually, we're not going to end it there. We're going to give you the shameless plug section.
Yeah.
You've always got.
We didn't get to any of our like segments we do with her.
That's literally fine.
That's good.
I think that's fine. I think the conversation went where it needed to go.
Exactly. Yeah,
So, I mean, you've normally got stuff coming out. What's popping at the moment?
Okay, so just had the Sofa Sound EP.
Yeah.
Just came out a few weeks ago. First single for the next North Quarter EP just came out, featuring Manny, who's an amazing singer. And there's a 4-track North Quarter EP that I think is going to be the next one's Channel, I think, and then after that will be the 4-track EP.
Nice.
I've got a 5-track Metalheads EP that's going to come out at some point. Hopefully this year, I'm hoping. And that's featuring... who's featuring on that? So we've got Ange on that, Manny again singing on some really heavy Amen business, and this incredible South African artist called Steo, just to be confusing.
Yeah.
It's not
Nice.
Steo, Sio, Sio, who's like she sings on like lots of like, she has her own music, but also like South African deep house and stuff.
Yeah.
I've done some remixes and stuff for her, and I've done this like a real North Quarter-y kind of vibe with her.
Sick.
It's sort of, I guess, the lead track on the album or the EP. There's a bunch of remixes. I'm trying to remember now. I've done one for Overview. I'm in the middle of one for Flex Out. What other ones are there? There's a bunch that I can't remember now off the top of my head. But release-wise, like original music-wise, North Quarter EP. And the next thing after that is Metalheads. I've also started a release for Jubei for Carbon.
Sick.
Which I've just one tune in the bag so far. I think that's the immediate queue
That's just next week.
that I can think of. I think like that should take me up to the end of the year anyway,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
possibly even into the new year. And that's off the top of my head. That's kind of what I know is locked, like 100% locked in and scheduled and all that stuff. And then, you're always writing new stuff and all that. So, but I do have to concentrate on my second Brook Riders album now. So I need to.
I feel like you got you'll be all right.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're good for like zero T
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, man, thank you so much for coming on. Like,
my
like I
pleasure,
said,
man.
there's literally so much stuff I haven't asked you that I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, well, let's do it
we're
again.
gonna have to do it
Whenever,
again
man.
for
Anytime.
sure. Nah,
Great fun.
Big pleasure. Yeah, big up.
Nice
Thanks
one.
everyone.
Big
Cheers.
love, lads.
Bye.
Bye.
Peace.